My name is Gardiner and I work for INRA. It's the Institut National de Recherche Agronomique and I'm based in Bordeaux in France. And I work there as a senior scientist, and the focus of my research is on wind damage to forests and calculation of risk to the forests and how the management of the forest changes the risk of wind damage. I work with colleagues who are concerned with insect damage and fire damage, because after a storm you always get insect damage following the storm, and when you have wind damage, because you've got a lot of dying wood on the ground, you have a greater fire risk because there's a higher fire load. So different disturbance agents are linked: wind with beetle attack, wind with fire. So we need to consider them together, not just separately. I think the last event I faced, or that I've really been studying, is a storm in January 2009 in Aquitaine region of France, with a very large man-made forest, Leyland forest. And it was actually a little bit surprising, this storm, because there had previously been a storm in 1999, 10 years before, and that was quite a shock. It was unexpected. And then to get a second storm within 10 years was really a big surprise. And together those two storms caused damage to half of the standing volume of the forest in Aquitaine region of France. Some of the lessons learned have been communicated. I don't think they've been well applied. And I think one of the problems is we're not always very good at including the economic impact of disturbance. So when we tell people that managing the forest in another way might reduce the risk of wind damage, we often don't talk about what economic benefit that might be to the forest owner or forest manager. So they then are unable to determine, is it worthwhile me doing another management where I might make less money but have a lower risk? It's difficult to balance that. And so I think we have a lot of work to do in promoting different options for forest planners, for forest managers, and to show them what the economic benefits of taking different approaches might be. So not only calculating the risk of damage, but actually adding the cost of following different routes and the potential economic benefits. Looking at all parts of the risk management cycle, making evaluations of the risk to your forests, and preparing for the next storm, which will happen at some point. So being prepared, having systems in place to respond very rapidly after the storm occurs. And then after this response phase, you have a recovery phase where you actually then start to think of the long-term recovery of the forest, how to build a more resilient forest, evaluate what happened in the last event, and to really think again, is this the way we want to manage the forest, and to critically evaluate the way the forest is managed, adjusting your management plans and preparing for the next storm event. So it's every part of what we call the risk management cycle, and before the storm, immediately after the storm, and then in the years following the storm as the forest recovers. I think there's a number of places that this is going to be hugely valuable. The first thing is to connect experts across Europe who are working on different aspects of risk, but also connecting people, all the stakeholders, so from policymakers, planners, people managing the forest, forest owners, researchers, connecting them together so that information that already exists in Europe. There's a huge amount of knowledge in Europe, but often people don't know about it, or it might be in a different language. Connecting that expertise from one part of Europe to another, or from one group of people to another group of people, exchanging ideas, exchanging best practice. I think if we did that, and I don't think that's very expensive to do it, I think that's relatively cheap, the added value of collating our knowledge, sharing our knowledge, making it more easily available, making it readily available, I think the value to the sector could be enormous in helping to reduce the damage to forests, not just from storms, but from all risks, from insects, from pests, from drought, from fire, and so on. So a lot of the knowledge already exists, but it's not always available to everybody that needs that information. So that's where I really see the benefit of such a risk facility, and I really hope that before I retire, I see such a risk facility in place and beginning to provide these benefits to the forestry sector in Europe.